enough positivity from that game. It was 38-3. There's another side of the coin. Let's hear it directly from head coach Matt LaFleur and quarterback Aaron Rodgers. Here they are.
Got to give the Saints all the credit in the world. They came ready to play. Absolutely embarrassed us today, and you can't do that against a well-coached and quality football team. Our guys are going to have to take a long, hard look in the mirror. It starts with myself. Obviously, didn't get these guys ready to play ball, and that's what happens when you go out there and play like that against a good football team. So give the Saints all the credit. They came ready to play, had a great plan, and executed.
I mean, I'll let him use those words, and I'll use it's just one game. You know, we played bad. I played bad. Offensively, we didn't execute very well. One game. We got 16 to go.
Weird to hear that, but it's true. 16 still to go. The first game matters less than it ever did, but this one's got to sting in. Hey, Mike, there's one thing about the Matt LaFleur Packers that I've noticed, especially in 2019. Anytime they pack up and go a fairly far distance from home, they went to California a couple of times in the regular season 2019, splattered. Went back to San Francisco in the playoffs, splattered again. And Aaron Rodgers talked about how we weren't ready to play in those games. Zadarius Smith told Chris and I at the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, right before the pandemic, that players weren't ready for that NFC Championship game, and he's one of them. There's something that's missing, and it's glaring because they're otherwise great. But they get on these long road trips against good teams, and they have this tendency not just to lose a close, tough game, they just don't show up.
So I'm one of those guys, you know, it's a lot of times, where do you put the blame? Do you put it on a coaching staff? And certainly we know he is a young coach. Do you put it on the young staff on how they prepare and how they travel and what the schedule is? As I said, players are scheduled down to the detail of what that itinerary says. But for me, in the professional ranks, I put it on the player. You're supposed to be a professional. You're a professional athlete, but there's a difference, you know, of being in the NFL and being a pro. When do you become a pro? When do you learn how to be a pro? That's obviously taking care of your body, taking care of what you need to, and certainly whether it's at home or in this case on the road, or in this case long distances on the road. That's the players. That's leadership of players, and that's each individual player and how they prepare themselves to travel and how to play on the road. Now, again, there's a percentage that goes on the coaching staff as well, but off the field in preparation, on the field in execution, I know coaches are have the game plan and such, and players work with it. But I am always one of those, Mike, that leans to the player on the field. You're a professional athlete. What's your responsibility? Your responsibility is to execute your job on the field, know your game plan, and be prepared to play, whether it's at home or whether you're traveling to the moon. It doesn't matter. That's on you. And so when you see that happen over time, over a couple of years, and you have some of the same players involved, I look at those players and I say, okay, are you ready to go? You know, what's your issue when you're traveling?
Where does player leadership factor into that? Now, I don't want to throw stones at Aaron Rodgers on this, but we see what Tom Brady's done in Tampa Bay. We see how he has taken that roster fully and completely by the reins. They follow him. They listen to him. They do whatever he says. They don't get complacent. They don't get too high. They don't get too low. They don't focus on the wrong things, all because of him. How much of it is player leadership or lack thereof? And it's not just Aaron Rodgers. There's other guys on that team that should be leaders. But in a moment like that, if the players aren't ready, what responsibility do other players have to help them access that and be ready to go?
Oh, I think it's a ton. I think what most head coaches do in the NFL is they run the program. They're the CEO of the program, but most will let the players run the locker room. Say, guys, that's your locker room. You run it. As I will continue to say, you're a professional. You guys act that way and run your locker room that way and be ready to go. So without question, you rely on leadership. And we know there's no question in Green Bay where that leadership is going to be in the locker room. When Aaron Rodgers talks, you listen. But Aaron Rodgers wasn't around a whole lot. Aaron Rodgers was talking about wanting out of there. Now, I will say, and I said this months ago, I didn't think he was ever leaving. I didn't think he was going to get traded. I didn't think he was sitting out for the year. I thought he was going to be in Green Bay for his last year, I'm sure, in Green Bay. But he wasn't around, and there was a bad taste in his mouth, and he kept trying to say, It's basically with management. It's with philosophy. It's not with anybody in the locker room. And listen, only the guys in the locker room know that deal. But if you got a guy that really isn't enamored with what's going on upstairs, maybe doesn't want to be around there, or knows he's only going to be there for another year, let me tell you, pro athletes, a lot of it, Mike, is self-preservation. When people say, oh, I wonder what that guy's thinking of that situation, or this guy's thinking of that situation, you know what guys in the locker room are thinking of? Because most of them were like me, foot soldiers. They weren't the leaders. They weren't the top guys. Most of the roster are foot soldiers. They're worried about themselves. They're worried about surviving. They're worried about playing well. They're worried about staying in the league. So you want to listen to that guy in the locker room, but all of a sudden you have a guy that you probably know isn't going to be there in another year. You want to make sure you're doing what you need to do to make sure when the coaching staff or when management is going over salary caps or tape that you're showing well enough to stay on that team. Where guys like Aaron Rodgers, they know they're going to be on that team. They know if they're going to be somewhere else, they know they'll be the leader of that next team. So that's one of the big differences. I don't know if people understand in the locker room, from the top of the locker room to the bottom of the locker room.
And I think that's a great point, because there used to be more of an obsession among NFL teams to ensure that coaches were never in the last year of their contracts. Get it extended before the last year or get rid of them before the last year. You don't want a lame duck coach because you don't want the players to tune him out because they think he's not going to be here next year anyway. Well, one level down, your starting quarterback. Every vibe, every assumption, everything that's gone on since the end of last year is pointing to this is it. And so it's a similarity. And his fear of being a lame duck has caused him to make himself a lame duck. And that's not what you have in the locker room for the other guys, the foot soldiers, as you said. So why should we listen to this guy? It's going to be Jordan Love leading the team next year or somebody else.
So what's going to happen now is how the season goes. And if you mentioned, 26 wins in the last 2 years, regular season, and what they've done, it's been a great record going into the playoffs. So that's what we're going to have to keep an eye on, because just about everyone in the world understands this is it for Aaron Rodgers. So the players in the locker room know it more than anybody else. So this is their last shot with a walk-in Hall of Famer, one of the great quarterbacks to ever play this game. So we can talk about how he's handled things off the field, but you can't deny what it is on the field. He's one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play in the NFL. And, there's been obviously a lot of talk. They didn't give him enough help. He should have more than one title. They didn't do enough with his talents. But players in the locker room right now don't care about all that. What they see right now is this is our last year with Aaron Rodgers. And if this season starts to go bad, because I've been on bad teams, and when it starts to go bad and you're not going to the postseason, or things aren't going well, it can get even worse in a locker room. And then you're going to get to the point, and again, it's game one, and they're right, there's 16 to go, and this is what we always do. After week one or week two, we start doing some of these things. But if this season starts to go wrong a little bit, then it's going to be, well, if he's not going to be our quarterback anyway, let's put the other guy in to get him some reps so we're ready to go next year. That's what I, as a player, sit there and think in a locker room of where this can go. But right now, it's just one game. We still have Aaron Rodgers. We have a great offense. Defense has to play so much better than they played in that first game. But one thing I've always said as well, the team you see in week one, Mike, is going to be different than the team you see in week 4, 5, and 6. It's going to be a little different. Sometimes a lot better, sometimes a little worse, but certainly not the same.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. By the time we get deeper into the season, these teams will be dramatically different, and the challenge is to put the loss behind you. It doesn't matter whether you lost by 35 or by 3. A loss is a loss. You move on. They have the Lions at home on Monday night, and then Sunday Night Football Week 3 at the San Francisco 49ers, another test to pack it up, take it on the road. Can they stay focused? Can they get it done? And as much as it's good for our business for Aaron Rodgers to constantly bare his soul about his future, and yesterday there was a sit-down with him and Aaron Andrews, and he was doing it again, at some point you just got to stop. And I feel like, Mike, he internalized it so much last year, he can't turn the faucet off this year now that he's opened it.
Well, again, I'm going to come at it from a former player, and a guy who would be in that locker room. And there's his really good friends on that team, and then there's guys who are quote-unquote acquaintances, your teammates, until you're not teammates. That's kind of how it works. If you can leave the NFL with 5 or 6 actually really good friends, you're kind of lucky. Other than that, it's basically teammates. And I'll go back to say what I said before. You know what those guys care about in that locker room? Right now. Right now. They don't care about all the drama. They could give a damn about all the drama that's going on. They want to play well individually. They want to do well as a team. They all know Aaron Rodgers is going to be just fine. Aaron Rodgers has made a ton of money. He'll go somewhere else and be the man there as well. And then you have to worry about yourself. And that's what players do. And I know it makes it sound like the players are selfish. It's still a team environment, and you're playing as a team. But when it gets down to it, players, it is about self-preservation. Okay, what's going to happen to us as a team? What's going to happen to me as a player? So they'll sit there and they'll listen to Aaron Rodgers talk about all that. And in their eyes, it's like, the Peanuts character when you hear the teacher, want. They don't want to hear any of that. They want to see the production on the field. And they know they have to produce better on the field. So the defensive side of the ball, they can't really care what Aaron's saying and what's going on because they played horribly. They played horribly, and they damn well better worry about what's going on in their film room and on their side of the ball more than the Aaron Rodgers drama that was going on.
I fully endorse any and all references that those of us born in the 60s will get. It's not our fault if you're too young to know what we're talking about. Go do some research. You have Google. Oh, and Mike, this is what they'll do to us. You see?
There you go.
Nope. Ragtime, baby, or play that old piano.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.